that it was a lot. Oops, I forgot I was supposed to be recording it. Too bad. I didn't say anything worth recording anyway. Um, the we were finding that what we were doing was raising money and giving money to projects and programs other people were doing. And we really felt that part of the spirit of Kiwanis was the Kiwanians being involved in the projects. And so we brainstormed on projects. And some of the ones, these are some we came up with, plus a few others that we've come up since then, but we wanted work projects, not just fundraising projects. And we thought we should refurbish the big LA on the side of the mountain outside of town. You could hardly see it was an LA anymore. That was a work project. It wasn't raising money. There's a national program called Free Bikes for Kids, and we have been involved with that now. And it's a work project. It doesn't raise any money, but it collects bikes and sends them to an organization that refurbishes them and gets them primarily to the reservations where the kids need bikes more and don't have them. We had worked with the Lab Community Partnership Office and we were going to see if they wanted help again, doing a clothing initiative for homeless shelters. And that was a really nice project. It turned out it was sort of interesting because the lab paid for everything. We just did all the work. But one of the things we found out was that the business that worked with the lab paid for new clothing for people in the homeless shelters. And the person who sold it to the lab at cost was a Santa Fe Kiwanian. So when we worked with them, we got to meet some other Kiwanis people who were helping in a different way. We do the fireworks show for 4th of July, and that's both a work and a money project. The rest of them, they're all work projects. And what we did is we said, okay, everybody who suggested a program agreed that before our committee meeting the next month that they would do research on the program, not a formal needs assessment, but an informal needs assessment, and decide what we were going to do. And some of them were real simple, like we can't survive in our town without high school kids, Key Club kids, National Honor Society, the Rotary Interact Club, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, without them helping all the nonprofits in town. And we thought we needed to do something to thank them. So one day after school, we just had a pizza party for them out in the auditorium near where the bus stops are. And the kids could come by and get pizza and Cokes and be thanked by the nonprofits for what they were doing for us. The other thing that struck me is there's all kinds of huge, big projects. Some of them are there, and I mean, they're overwhelming. Addiction, the national debt, disease, violence, social media, border issues. And if you ever want to know problems, you can Google problems. And it came up, I got a list of 96. I thought this was depressing enough to have 7 times 4, to have 28. We didn't need 96 problems. And when you look at these are the kind of problems that you need to really focus a needs assessment on, and don't just throw them out because they're too big. I use addiction as a problem. Addiction is a huge problem, and it's not real clear that I can do anything about that. And I worked at a counseling center for 17 years, and I don't know that I can do a whole lot about it. But our Key Club decided to do something about it. And I think that their project was really interesting for a variety of reasons. They were concerned about the friends dying from fentanyl poisoning. And they did a lot of research. They worked with Juvenile Justice Advisory Board, which is a a group in town. It's actually a statewide group with public health, with the county, with the school counselors, and they wanted to do something to make sure that the high school kids really knew about fentanyl poisoning. And they knew there would be expenses, so they also set up a system to raise money, and they bought cotton candy machine. And we have, during the summer, we have Friday night outdoor concerts, and they're very, very well attended. And all summer they sold cotton candy. In fact, it was so popular that two other organizations started doing it, but ours were the best. And they literally made thousands of dollars during the summer, which paid for any parts of this workshop program that were expenses that the Key Club kids had to come up with. And then they ended up giving $3,000 donation to Juvenile Justice Advisory Board, which was going to continue working on that. So they took a huge problem, they raised money, they did a workshop. I think 80 high school kids attended, and the kids all got packages of Narcan in case any of their friends had overdoses. They made sure that they were in all the schools and all the community locations that they might be needed. And they addressed what is just a huge problem, but they addressed it by taking a little piece of it. Now, another one, of my quote from Kenny Rogers' song on the bottom, know when to hold them, know when to fold them, and know when to walk away, is another project that was suggested on a slide about doing the LA on the mountain. And one of our club members owned that and did a lot of research. He went up on the mountain. There's not a road that goes up there. There are paths that go. It's very steep. And of course, when you're building something on a mountain, it's, you know, it's not like it's flat. You have to build frames if you want to do the LA. And what he found out with talking with engineers is that it would take roughly 10 tons of white gravel and then all the framework for it to build that. Now, 10 tons is 20,000 pounds of gravel and has to be taken up non-motorized, which would be, for example, putting 20 pounds of gravel in a backpack and going up. And that would take a lot of people, a lot of time, roughly 1,000 trips up and down the path on the mountain. That's in the category of know when to walk away. We actually think this is an excellent project. It's very, very popular with the high school kids because, you know, it's a LA mountain. It's a popular project in town, but it's sort of overwhelming on how to even think about doing something like that. Now, these critters, I'm gonna look at my notes and see what I'm forgetting. This is one of the tools that you might use on a community needs assessment. And different people like using different tools. This is called a SWOT, and it stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And you can take your project and look at these and decide if it makes sense to do it. This is something I would do before I went out and tried to, you know, talk to community members to drum up some business. So I'm going to use that backpack project. Is there any of you have thoughts on what might be a strength or a positive of doing providing weekend food for hungry kids? And that's they called their backpack project because they'd send Friday afternoon, they'd send 6 meals home non-perishable meals home with kids to have over the weekend. Can you think of any strengths or positives about doing that program? You have to wake up to do that.
I think it's an excellent project because it provides for a need within the community.
Right. Yeah. A real strength is the need of assuming that, there are kids and they have, in the theoretically in that sample, they have, they know that there's a need and it's a positive thing for the kids. The other things that I thought of is there are usually in communities a number of partners. For example, they're usually food banks, or sometimes the local grocery stores will donate food. So there are sources of the food that perhaps could be gotten at little or no cost. Also be a popular project. I mean, everybody sort of wants to for kids. So there are strengths. Now, how about weaknesses? Negatives, weaknesses.
Well, food handling, food safety.
I'm sorry, say it again.
Food handling and food safety, that sort of thing.
Okay, I'm not understanding what you're saying.
You said food safety? And I said food allergies.
You know what, both of those are really, really important. I had put them on my notes too, that, if you're sending home corn chips and the kid's allergic to corn, you got problems. So if you're sending 100 backpacks home, you really have to know where their allergies. If people need to be gluten-free. I do cook lunch for our Kiwanis Club on Tuesdays, and I'm learning about having to cook gluten-free, because we need to provide that too. So allergies, food handling, there are a lot of state license requirements for food handling. So weaknesses are plentiful. Another issue for me is, and I think maybe it's an anti-government comment, but in many states, many schools in New Mexico, if you have a certain percentage, and it isn't real high, of poverty level kids, everybody in the school is eligible for free and reduced breakfast and lunch. I mean, so your parent could be making $100,000 a year, but you get free lunch and free breakfast. And I don't think any club can really just provide weekend food, nor is it needed for every child in a school because of the state regulations. So dealing with that is just a little bit tricky. Another possible weakness is the schools, I think, are very, very careful about not singling out somebody for being poor or needy. And if you're giving a bright purple backpack to kids who are poor on Friday afternoon to take home, that's just a little insensitive. So there are weaknesses, and any weakness has to be dealt with. How about, well, opportunities? I get opportunities and strengths mixed up, but I think it's the same as what we had, that there's really a need and it's really important. How about any other opportunities you can think of?
It's an opportunity to become a part of a solution.
Right. Yeah, right. And again, an important part of something that's needed. And threats are real close to weaknesses too. And I think that the allergies, the food handling, the embarrassing kids, all of those are things that you really have to be careful of. So by doing a SWOT, and you do this before you take your next step, because if there are no strengths and there's all these weaknesses, you want to talk about whether you want to do the project.
And that,
Now-
if I might comment, Cheryl, one of the
Please.
main threats I would be worried about is the potential of liability.
And breathing potential, everything's potential of liability. You know, you'd have to be really careful that you would have a signed thing, permission from the parent and know, you know, have them fill it out and know what allergies there may be, or food preferences. So yeah, have to be careful. And I don't have that on my list, but I think that may be the most important. Okay, let me do a different project, run through real quick. The bike project, and we do this, we've done it for 3 years. In the bike project, it's a national program called Free Bikes for Kids. And what we do in the community is collect bikes of any size, any condition, and then we send them to Santa Fe, where they have teams of people who refurbish the bikes. They put on new brakes, they put on new handlebars, they put on new, almost always new tires and tubes. It's a really nice project. And one of the strengths of the projects is, again, that it's needed, but another, it's really easy for us. I'm in charge of the project and I have trouble walking and getting around. I don't have to do much. It's, you know, I can sit at a table and people drive up and wheel their bikes into, it happens to be the Catholic Church Parish Hall. And when they're all collected, and the organization sends a U-Haul truck to us and loads it up and takes the bikes down to Santa Fe. It just takes a few people working on it. When they first came to us and asked if we would do it, I said, how many bikes do you think we'll get? This was during COVID, and they said, oh, you know, maybe 50. Well, we got 160 the first year, 140 the second year, 100, maybe a little over last year. And so strengths of this project. I put in a strength that wasn't much work.
This is Nola. One of the strengths would be getting the children outside away from their cell phones and tablets.
Right, yeah. And all these bikes go to needy kids. They have a system where social services and different organizations can request the refurbished bikes. And then they set up a time and they come and pick them up. We do it in October and they do the refurbishing in November. So sometimes it's, you know, for Christmas, the kids can get new bikes. But for a lot of the kids who get the bikes, it's a way to get to school, especially the ones that have gone on the reservation. So how about other strengths?
Well, if you look at one thing, you're helping keep the dump emptied.
Right. Well, and you know what? The first year we did it, which was during COVID, everybody, you know, was home. So that a lot of garages and sheds got cleaned out. That's why we ended up with so many bikes. And my memory of the event was that we got a lot of bike nerds in Los Alamos. And we got many very, very high quality bikes donated. They were brands of bikes that were popular in, you know, the 80s and 90s. And a lot of these guys, they'd wheel their bikes and they'd say, oh, look at that bike. Look, that bike is so cool. I had one like that. And it was funny to see how happy people were and how thankful the donors were to get rid of all these bikes. You know, it's like we were doing a favor for them. How about weaknesses?
And do one more strength.
Okay.
Kids getting out, getting some exercise.
Yeah, right. Well, that's a biggie.
Yeah.
Okay, weaknesses of the program. Can you think of any? You sort of have to have been there to know the big weakness. The big weakness is some of these bikes were in terrible shape. And you'd think, how would this ever get to be something that would be a bike a kid would be proud of? But they do have a big team that works on them. They get them all safe, but some of the bikes just go for parts. You know, they may take the pedals off of one or the seat off of another, but some of them are in very bad shape. But you know, we'll take them. Opportunities. It's an easy project. It doesn't take much work. The people who bring the bikes wheel them in to the parish hall where we have them. It's a good project because it's easy, but there are some
I think
threats.
I would say one thing, you get the opportunity to talk to a lot of people about Kiwanis.
Yeah, you know what? That's true. And we also, because it's a statewide organization, they do advertising, and we've have people who've come in to volunteer with us. People, you know, we've never seen before, and then they show up at some of our other events. So yeah, it's a good way. In fact, this year we picked up a new member. She just started about 2 weeks ago, and she had brought a bike into us, and her father had been in Kiwanis, and she said, "Oh well, I'd like to join," and she's come to the meetings since then. So yeah, that I don't have that written down, but that's a really good point. The threat that we had the first year, I was expecting about 50 bikes. And I had made arrangements with some of our club members who have pickups to come. And we do this like Friday afternoon from 2 to 6 and Saturday morning from 8 to 12. So we're not doing a long time. I'd made arrangements for a number of pickup trucks to come at 12 noon on Saturday, who would drive these bikes down to Santa Fe. Well, by about 2:30 on Friday, when we opened at 2, we already had 50 bikes. So I knew we were in trouble. I had no idea on how in the world we were going to get these bikes. I had no idea how many bikes were coming. And, you know, like I said, we ended up with 160 bikes. And so everybody was calling any friends who had pickup trucks, and our Kiwanis Club has a flat trailer which can hold lots of bikes, and somebody else had some big dump truck type truck. And we did get them to Santa Fe, but the next 2 years, I said, yes, we will do it, but we need to have you provide the transportation for the bike. And the organization sent a big U-Haul truck, biggest U-Haul truck each year. And that just made it even more an easy project. It's also an easy project because we don't have to determine any of the repairs or any of, you know, who does it go to. So you use the SWOT just to kind of analyze what you're doing. Oops, hitting the wrong button again. Another obvious tool is brainstorming. And I'd mentioned that we brainstormed projects that we could do that didn't raise money, but helped people. And you can start with 0. In other words, we just say at a meeting, you know, what should we be doing that we aren't doing? Or you can start with a specific project and capture all the ideas. You all have done this. It's, you know, where you have everybody shout out ideas and you group them together, and then you vote on them and come up with some decision on action. So brainstorming's been around forever. Focus groups are kind of interesting, and we actually do those more than we know we're doing them. A lot of years ago, about 1996, 97, a builder bought piece of property, a small piece of property in the middle of Los Alamos to build houses. And he was going to, this is nothing to do with Kiwanis, but he set up a bunch of focus groups. I was in one of them, and we all went, and we were old even then, a lot younger than now, but still, 25 years, 27 years ago. He was going to build all 2-story houses, and we said, no, we don't want 2-story houses, we want 1-story houses. And he said, basically he said, I won't make enough money if I build 1-story houses. I can put the same number of houses on it and charge a whole lot more if I build 2 stories. And we pretty much said, that's not what we need in this town. In a focus group, you don't necessarily let the group come to a conclusion. You gather data. But, the builder was real smart. He didn't say, no, I'm not going to do it, or yes, I am going to do it. But he did actually make a change on his plans. He built 30 houses, 20 are 2-story, 10 are 1-story. I happen to live in one of the 1-stories, and of the 10 1-stories, mine's the oldest. It was built in 1999, and not one of those houses has ever been up for sale. Not that people haven't moved. Almost every one of them has different owners, but they don't go on the market because there's a waiting list of people who want to get in the 1-story houses. So the builder got his way, but we got our way too. And focus groups can be real valuable in the club or outside of the club. Now, this is my favorite tool. It's technically called a results change. I heard about it called the logic model, but in it, you look at your inputs. So on the backpack project, oops, I've got to stop bumping my mouse. On the backpack project, you need to look at your finances. How are we going to get the money for this? How are we going to get people to donate it? The personnel. How many Kiwanians in my club would it take to pack 100 backpacks once a week, every Friday, have them every Friday to go home and then get them back, clean them out on Monday? I mean, that's a huge personnel issue. And then what community agencies could be approached? How much money do you need? You can get volunteers, but it still costs a lot of money. And who's going to partner with us? The activities you're going to do once you decide, we're going to see if we're going to do this project. The activities are just a flow chart. And some of the things you folks mentioned that we have to be careful of is, how do we get the information we need on allergies and liability and safety food handling and just transporting everything and not embarrassing the kids. I mean, it's a very big logistic problem if you have a big project. It's not a big logistics project if you're deciding when to have your board meeting. Your outputs are what the backpacks with the meals. And the outputs are easy to measure, but the outcomes are very, very hard to measure in this kind of project, because I know we're going to send 100 backpacks home every Friday afternoon. I don't know who's eating the food. I don't know if it's going to the kids it's supposed to. I don't know a whole lot of information. I can't control what happens to my product. Sorry. Don't know what happens to my product when it actually goes where it went. And that can be real frustrating. The same thing with the impacts. If the kids come all excited to get their backpacks on Friday afternoon, that's a good measure. if you start out giving 100 and by 2 months later, there's about 15 kids who show up at the pickup place, it's a bad measure, but it's a good measure of whether you're meeting your goals. In the sample on the Kiwanis International website, they talk about a state study that's done every 5 years. Well, that would give you the best results, except that kids grow up, and the kids that you have fed 5 years before may not be the ones who are involved in the survey. So it's all things that have to be considered, but it's not all things that you have to have any control over. This is a Henry Ford quote. I'd heard it before, but what is needed is not always what is wanted. If Henry Ford said, if I asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. They would not have said a gasoline motor vehicle. So if you need to figure in here, if you're going to do a needs assessment and you start asking people what they want, you may get very different answers than what actually solves the problem you want to solve. So, none of these things are simple. This is another tool, and sorry, these tools are kind of boring, but they are of some use when you're trying to decide if you want to do a project, especially if there's dissension on whether some parts of the organization want to do it or not. A gap analysis, you look at what is now, what you'd like to have, and what are the gaps. And if you use the backpack project, the current state is there's some number of kids going hungry over the weekend because they don't have food. They get food at school Monday through Friday, but they don't get food Saturday and Sunday. What do we want? We want the kids to have access to food 7 days a week. And the gap is obvious. And then you go back then to that, this one I'm actually going to go on purpose. You go back to this and you have to look at all the parts of the project. All of this can be kind of hard. So my question is, why bother with the community needs assessment? Hey, we can just sit at our meeting, as we did a couple of years ago, and come up with all kinds of projects and all kinds of needs. So that's the big question. Why bother?
Because that's what we're there for, is to help the community by working with kids and helping in the community to solve problems within the community.
Right, but can't I just sit at a meeting? I know what the problems are. I've lived in Los Alamos for 51 years this month.
You may think you know what the problems are, but you can't assume that. You have to find out what the problems of other, as seen by other people.
Yeah, and we are a very affluent community. I mean, there's no question about it. But having worked at a counseling center for 17 years and having worked at the schools for here and in Maryland for 32 years before that, there are real pockets in any community that need help that we may not even know about. Mm-hmm. And but there's so many problems we do know about. How about we just pay attention to the ones we do know about?
That's a conundrum that we all face.
Yep.
Sometimes we don't know what projects are making the best impact and improving the community more than another. So we just go on and we end up doing the same project all the time, and we have to change once in a while and bring in fresh ideas and fresh projects.
You know what? I think you wrote my next slide, because I think that's exactly what it says. So why do it? It just seems like a lot of work. And one thing is, are we doing the best or getting the best bang for the buck? that if, if we're doing a project and it's a lot of work, it's very expensive, but sure, we're helping people, is that the best way to reach the neediest group? And it's tough, and unless you do some kind of analysis, you don't know for sure that that's the best way to do it. Now, some of our projects are not hands-on projects. Some of them are raising money to support other projects. And, then you're trusting the other nonprofits for what they're doing. But I don't know that we do it. And of those various tools, any thoughts on what tools you might use to answer that question? Are we getting the best bang for our buck? There's kind of a way to answer that. And I think if I try to put it on the screen, it is going to do something weird, but I'm going to try it. And well, maybe I won't. I'm not sure how brave I am. I'm going to stop sharing. We'll see what happens. I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, we got all kinds of people who are not in this. See, I knew we were going to have interesting things. And then I want to share. I got my regular group back. On here, there's a document, and I'll put it in the chat, I think, if I can figure out how to do that when we're done, called Analyzing Your Impact. And it's a very nice little 3-page document. It's on the Kiwanis website. Again, it's just Kiwanis Community Needs Assessment. And one of the items that comes up is called Analyzing Your Impact. And it has you systematically list all of your programs that your club is doing. And it looks at how many people, does the club support it? What does it cost? How many people are affected, et cetera. Then the second page is all your fundraising activities, sort of goes through the same thing. Does the club support it? How much money do you raise? How much time does it take? How many people are impacted? It's a very nice little project. And it's worth looking at, because basically I'm going to stop this and try to go back to where I was. Well, maybe.
There you are.
Back to where I was. It's a real good thing for
Well, I think she froze. Or is it just me?
Yep, she froze.
Yeah, she froze. I don't know what happened. Yeah.
Bless you, Norm.
club to
Oh, there she is, kind of, sort of.
Did you get back to us, Cheryl?
I'm going to try to. This is called Living in Los Alamos, because our internet will sometimes go in and out. And that's what happened. It went away and knocked me out. But in any case, I apologize. So the bang for your buck, that Analyzing Your Club projects and fundraising is really a nice program. Another reason to do a needs assessment is that inertia is alive and well. We keep doing what we've always done. And one of my favorite quotes is Stephen Glenn says that insanity is keep doing the same things and expecting different results. So there are things that we've done in our club. One thing we've done for years is pancake breakfast. And, you know, Kiwanis and pancake breakfast kind of go together. And the fact is, when we looked at pancake breakfast, we were doing it as a fundraiser and we weren't making any money. And we were also doing it as marketing because it's a branding tool for Kiwanis. I mean, all over the country, Kiwanians do pancake breakfast, but it's actually a lot of work and a lot of expense. And we had good attendance, but it wasn't clear. We have so many different projects. It just wasn't clear that was the best way to spend our time. So we still do breakfast with Santa because that's a big deal. But we haven't been doing pancake breakfast since COVID, and nobody's saying real loud and clear, gee, we need to go back to that. So we may not.
Cheryl,
Yes.
we have been doing a lot with Applebee's pancake breakfast.
That's because you have stores where you live.
Well, that's true, but we started it off with Key Club, and now we did it with Kiwanis and had the Key Clubbers working, and we made like $1,000.
That's great.
And that surprised us, but there's no work involved. It's just getting people there.
Yeah. Well, there's always work involved.
Wow.
You can always sucker them into telling them there's no work, but there's always work involved. But yeah, that is such a good example of how you can take something that's a lot of work and not much profit, and with some tweaking make a difference. And while I say there aren't really restaurants in Los Alamos, there aren't really restaurants in Los Alamos, but there's possibilities for that. So I'm going to pass that one on. That's a good idea. But that inertia is a problem because it's a whole lot easier to just keep doing what we've always done. Most of us, I guess, fortunately, are getting older, and sometimes it's easier not to change. And it's not just the older people who have trouble changing. Sometimes the younger people do too. But it really, honestly, is getting harder to do some of the projects. Things that we used to be able to do because we could walk better or carry more weight or whatever, we just can't do anymore. So we need to really look at the projects, and actually your Applebee's example is perfect for that, because the Key Club kids would enjoy doing it, and Applebee's no doubt gets benefit from that too. We need to keep looking at it, keep analyzing whether the programs are good, whether they're reaching our goals. COVID was an interesting thing, and COVID forced us to change. It made us, at least for us, it made us not do one of our favorite projects, which is Breakfast with Santa. And it was always well attended. We used to have it at the senior center, which had a great kitchen. And it wasn't big enough and it didn't have great parking, but we had been doing it there for years, but we couldn't do it during COVID because they closed totally. And so we didn't do it one year, but then decided to do a COVID safe Breakfast with Santa. And we did it at the Catholic Church Parish Hall, which is very big. It has very good parking. And when you think back on the SWAT, strengths being able to park when you're doing something in December in the mountains is nice because you might have snow, not that we do anymore, but we could not do a cooked breakfast, but we did, a whole lot of choices. The kids, they could yogurt and fruit and donuts and stuff like that. We had lots of space, so people were very spread out. We changed our procedures. They signed up online and came at a certain time. Since we had a lot of space, we were able to change how we did photos and encouraged whole families to do pictures, and that was real popular. And then COVID ended. And we go back to the club and say, okay, so are we going to keep doing it where there's better parking, more space, easier breakfast? And the club says, hell no, we want to go back to cooked breakfast, pancake breakfast in the small senior center with terrible parking. And this year we did that. I was the only one who voted against doing it. I wanted to stay where it was so much easier. And we did not, well, I guess we did the ultimate community assessment on it. People vote with their feet. We had 650 people who came to our Santa breakfast, which in many ways was a nightmare. We had one person, nobody complained. There were long lines, very crowded, ran out of food. Nobody complained. One lady whined a bit, but nobody complained. And it was very clear that's the ultimate needs assessment when you get that kind of response to an activity. So now we have a big problem. What are we going to do next year? Because it probably wouldn't even be safe to have that many people over the course of about 4.5 hours. We've got to do something different, and we're going to have to be doing some of this needs assessment stuff, because we know we need to do breakfast with Santa. We know we need to have a cooked breakfast, but we've got to deal with all the other problems. So one of the things that the needs assessment is essential for is to tweak your project and make sure that they work okay. This is that really good Kiwanis KI website analyzing your impact. So anyway, that's more than I know about anything. But I do think that some form of needs assessment is good. And in the very first slide, it mentioned community and deciding who your community is. Like on the backpack project, the community may end up being defined as one school because that's all we could manage. The bike thing might have to be determined that we can only do it if the organization supports us in some way. But all of that needs to be worked out. And I think it was Harry Shapiro a couple years ago, I was talking with him, and he was real big on having procedures for everything. And it's good to have those procedures. And we'll have to start with our pancake breakfast with Santa procedures to figure out what in the world we can possibly do to meet the needs of 650 people who want to bring their kids to see Santa, and also be safe and have a good experience for everyone. Because I don't know, I'm not sure I would have thought that was a good experience for my kids. But like I said, nobody complained, and only one person whined, and it wasn't me. I whined beforehand and whined afterwards, but not during the event. So anyway, any thoughts on how your club would use needs assessments?
I'll say one thing about our club. As mentioned before, we've teamed up with various organizations like Roadrunner, for example, and And we help out once a month, but they have led us to other projects involving food, like various schools where we help out distributing food. And there's other projects like science fairs. We're involved in 3 different science fairs. We started out doing the regional science fair here in Albuquerque, and we've since been contacted by other schools saying, hey, we need science fair judges too. So we've gotten into that realm. And so that's an easy way to kind of find out what the needs are.
Yeah, and in a sense, the other organizations sometimes do the needs assessment for you. That you know, you don't need to do all the work if they're providing you the data up front on what needs to be done. I know when Karen lived in Scottsdale, whatever club, there's some club in Phoenix that does kits for kids, for foster kids. And I was there, and there was a joint project with her club. And I mean, it was amazing. It was this huge warehouse, and they packed kits. You know, we have a handful of foster children in Los Alamos. We have very, very few. And they had more. I mean, it was a number of years ago. I don't remember the numbers, but it was in the thousands of foster children that they were providing services for. So the need out there is great. But I think we're all doing good. What other things are you folks doing that you might want to take a look at, or maybe you don't want to take a look at it because it's such a good project?
You made mention
I'd
of
just like to-
procedures.
I'm sorry?
I'd like to bring up a point if I could, Cheryl,
Okay,
because you kind of said it there. There are needs, and I belong to the Queen Creek Club in Arizona, and we've gone through a tremendous amount of change over the years, because when we started out in Queen Creek, for a long time, we had very few people out there. And then all of a sudden we had an explosion. Now, where we used to have 1 high school, now we have 5 high schools.
wow.
So everything changes, and you have to keep looking at what's going on within the whole city as it grows, and you have to look at different ways to look at more niche things rather than overall for the city of 300 or 175 or 200,000 people. It's different to look at it in the smaller towns. So I like what you've said, because I think what you're doing here, your needs assessment, is what every club needs to do when they consider new projects. And I do like the fact of what you brought up is we have to be willing to look at things and change. And once in a while we have to take a chance. We're not going to be perfect every time, but we have to take a chance once in a while on new projects. So I think it's a fantastic way to assess it.
And even those huge projects have little pieces that Kiwanis clubs can do. Oh, I can't see your name, so I can't. What, go ahead and talk. Just talk.
I had made mention, you said procedures, and I'm on the same committee as Jerry, and I just joined last year, and I started being the secretary this year. So
Oh,
everything's
wow.
changed
That's
so fast.
that's the most important job in the club.
Yeah. And the reason I'll tell you, I used to be on the Key Club in Queen Creek High School. And the reason I came to Kiwanis is because I really enjoyed it in high school. And I think for us younger people that are starting fresh, learning of this, I think the procedures would be great, because there's so much knowledge. Like Jerry that just spoke, I always tease him and I tell him I'm going to pick his brain for everything he has, because I want to be his little mentor. He is so knowledgeable. And I think that for us to have procedures like that is very helpful for the younger people coming up that don't really know how things work. That, okay, well, you know what? I did this at work and it worked for us, but that doesn't mean that it's going to work for the community. It may have worked I work at Ford Motor Credit, with 100 people, but it's not going to work for, thousands or whatever. So I think the fact that you guys have procedures put in place, good stuff.
Yeah, and really sometimes, like you say, new members or even new committee members will say, well, why do you do that? Or why do you do it like that? And somebody having to answer that. Now you are both at Queen Creek?
Yeah, Norm too. He's in here.
Oh, okay.
No,
Well, you know, that's my
I've lived in Queen
favorite,
Creek forever.
olive oil.
Oh yeah, I
It's
don't
funny
know
that Norm hasn't said anything.
Norm's quiet. He's observing.
Yeah,
If we talk about a project in Queen Creek, and for 20 some years, we were doing the parade and festival in Queen Creek. When we started out, there was when we did the parade up Ellsworth, we would usually have maybe 20 to 50 floats at first when we first started. Now, last year, we had to limit the number of floats. We had to limit it to 85.
oh,
So that just shows you, as you grow, you have to adapt your project. And next year we may not be able to have it because there's no land for parking anymore. We don't know what's going to happen. So it's neat to see evolution of a project, and that's what that one was.
yeah. The noise in the background is that my husband was in another breakout room and also in another room here, and his battery died, so he came in here, but turn it down.
I'm trying to.
How many people are in your club?
Amy can answer that better than me because I don't keep track as secretary any longer.
I think there's like 25 or 27. I can't remember now.
Oh, wow.
It fluctuates, 24. 20. And the funny thing is half these people don't even live in Queen Creek. They all come from Gilbert and Chandler. I mean, well, I shouldn't say we're, because
That's a
I didn't
drive.
create the group, but yeah, it must be a real tight knit because there's other clubs out there in those areas. So
Yeah, your comment about the float growth. My grandson went to Paradise Valley High School when my daughter still lived up in Scottsdale, and their key club kids were limited to 250. They didn't allow more than 250 in key
Kids in the club, members?
Yeah, kids in the club. I'm like, wow, because I mean we have good numbers, but you know, we're just not the size community that they have there. But okay, anything else? Any other possible practical use of anything from needs assessment for your club? But I do agree about procedures. I don't know how this new website change, which just occurred, it's going. We had put all of our procedures on the old website, and I don't know if everything got transferred over to the new one. I'm afraid to look. And of course, that was a couple years ago, and we haven't updated them. So maybe it's good if they get lost and we have to update them.
just out of
Does that sound
curiosity,
familiar,
what
Norm?
website
I'm sorry, out of curiosity, what?
what
Oops,
website
lost-
did you go with? Yeah, I got two dogs that are not happy right now. What website did you go with now that Portal Bus is
Oh,
gone?
we don't, it's the one Kiwanis International went with. It was Portal
Oh.
Buzz, and it's gone to a new one.
Okay, yes, they have a free one, right?
They have a free one, and as secretary, I guess you probably better try it out because everything you do has to be on that. I don't know anything about it. I've been afraid to look at it.
Uh-oh, okay. So yeah, so we're dealing with that right now too. So I was just curious to see which one you went with.
Yeah. Well, we got as far as talking someone into being the webmaster.
Oh, there you
That's
go.
great.
We got
Great
that part
That's
too.
what we
We
need.
just
It's
need to get
not-
the website.
It's not the current secretary who wanted someone else to be the webmaster.
She's smart.
Well, I appreciate you guys' patience. I'm going to try to put those two links in the chat. One of them is that Analyzing Your Club one, which really is a nice document. And the other one is that sample backpack project. So I am going to I don't know what I'm gonna do. I think I'm going to stop sharing and then see if I can put that in the chat and basically end the session. You're welcome to go have your glass of wine now or go just hang around and talk to other people who are out and around. But
Well,
thank you all.
Cheryl, I
Appreciate
want to
it.
say from all of us, a very big thank you. I thought you did a very good job today, and I'm sure that we're going to have a lot of people take a look and try to do some assessments down the road.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't have to be hard, but it needs to be done. So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Okay, bye-bye.
Excellent job. Thank you
Thank-
so much.
Very good.
Valuable.
Very good
Thank
job.
you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Cheryl.
All right, thank
Thank
you.
you.
And I'm gonna see if I can get those 2 links in the chat, but actually it doesn't matter if I don't, because just Google Kiwanis Community Needs Assessment and there's good stuff there. So, okay, good night, folks.
Okay,
night.
thank you very much again.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Hmm.